Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Republican Primary Forum for the 17th Congressional District, organized by the League of Women Voters and Robert Morris University. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. Rather, the League of Women Voters encourages citizens to play an informed and active role in government, and it conducts candidate forums to provide opportunities for voters to hear the views of candidates on issues they face. The content of this forum is the property of the League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh. My name is Kristen Davis, and I'm a graduating senior from Robert Morris University, majoring in political science and economics. Originally, I am from South Fayette Township near Bridgeville, Pennsylvania, and I'm the founder of the RMU Civic Education Series, a monthly panel discussion that brings together university and community leaders for nonpartisan discussions. Otherwise on campus, I currently serve as the president of the RMU Bands, and I'm heavily involved with the University Honors Program and the RMU Women's Leadership and Mentorship Program, in addition to interning with Girl Scouts of the USA. I'm excited to be with you all tonight to present this opportunity to the constituents of the 17th Congressional District, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. Joining us tonight from the Republican Party, in order of how they will begin speaking tonight, are Kathy Coder and Jason Killmeyer. A third candidate in this race, Jeremy Schaefer, was invited to attend but did not due to other commitments. By being at this forum, candidates have agreed in writing to follow the rules and regulations of the forum as established by the League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh. The response order has been drawn with straws shortly before tonight's program. Because of time constraints, we may not be able to ask all of the questions that have been submitted. Questions in the guise of personal insults will not be asked, and duplicate or very similar questions will be consolidated. All responses have a time limit of 1 minute, and you'll see on the screen an alert for when you have 30 seconds remaining, 15 seconds remaining, and when to stop. These time limits will be strictly enforced. There will be no time given for rebuttals. If a candidate wishes to respond to another candidate's statements, you will need to use time from your answer to the next question. Please wrap up when I ask you to, and please do not interrupt your opponent. All moderator decisions are final. Let's get started. So Ms. Coder, please tell us about your qualifications for this position, including your relevant experience, and tell us why you're running for this office.
Thank you for having me. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership, and I believe that this is a vital thing to have in this role. I have served on local government. I was the president of my council in Bellevue for 10 years. I served there. I was also the president of Connect, which was all the urban core communities. I know this district intimately. I am from Beaver County, and I believe that I'm ultimately the best qualified because I do know this district very well, and I know the people of this district, and I know what the issues are. So I believe I can be a great voice in Washington for this district, and I want to be effective and somebody who actually knows the people. So I do believe that I am qualified, and I'm looking forward to serving the 17th district.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Killmeyer.
Kristen, thank you for moderating. Looking forward to tonight. Emily, Judy, and team at the League, thank you for hosting us. And people of Western Pennsylvania, my name is Jason Killmeyer. The reason I'm running for Congress is I believe the next 3 or 4 years will go a very long way towards determining the next 30 or 40 in American life. Can you feel that? Think about what we've been through the past couple of years together. We've gotten away from the basics. Don't spend money you don't have. Police your borders. Stay out of other people's business. These are the basics that we've gotten away from. And the very people who have caused prices to rise, who have caused all this damage, are doubling down on their mistakes. America, we need to course correct. I intend to be part of that course correction. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Killmeyer, we'll start with you for this next question. With the implementation of a new congressional map comes the formation of new districts along with the changing demographics of its constituents. What do you think are the top 3 issues that concern these voters in the new 17th Congressional District, and how do you propose to address them?
Inflation is number 1, inflation is number 2, and inflation is number 3. Kristen, I talk every day to small business owners, people who own repair shops, restaurants, dry cleaners. I ask 2 words: how's business? And what I hear from these people is that they are barely hanging on. We are in a scenario in which 8 7.5% inflation is a reality. If you would have told that to somebody a year ago, 2 years ago, they wouldn't have believed you. They would have thought we were back in the 1970s. The way to turn off inflation is simple. You don't pump $6 trillion worth of government aid into the economy in a single 2-year span. We can't do that again. If you want to stop inflation, we've got to stop the unlimited and out of control federal spending.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Coder.
I know this district intimately, and one of the things I ask when I'm out there is, what are you looking for in somebody who's going to do this job? And it was riveting to me. One gal raised her hand and she said, I just want someone I can trust. So I believe people have lost hope. I do agree with Jason, inflation is at an all-time high. And I think that people are looking for leadership. And I think we have a big leadership deficit. And they want to see their representative and know that they're for them. I also believe the economy is a huge thing. And in this district in particular, we have the opportunity to bring so many jobs and a spotlight onto Western Pennsylvania. I want to bring jobs here, and I want the economy to flourish. And I think people need that hope.
Thank you. So Ms. Coder, we'll start with you for this next one. Please explain the role you believe the federal government should play in public education, and therefore the policies you would support or oppose.
I believe education, if we really look at it, it should be in the hands of the parents, and they should really understand what's going on. But I do think on a federal level, we need to look at what the Department of Education is doing and hold them accountable, and possibly even look at how we can push more things down to the states. I do think we need parent involvement, we need transparency, and I think the federal government, I'm somebody who I would like to see less legislation and less federal government and more in the hands of the people in the states.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Killmeyer.
Kristen, I talk to parents every day who weren't involved in politics up until a year ago, maybe a little bit further back. And they say, hey, I wasn't a big cable news watcher. I wasn't a big political person. And then I had to take off work early because they were teaching my kids what? This is inevitable when government has this big a role in education. Here are some things that we've done as a country before there was a federal Department of Education. We landed on the moon. We won a couple of world wars. We invented so many of the great inventions out there in this country. We don't need a federal Department of Education. We should get rid of it. To the extent that the federal government will have a continued role in education, it should be to restrict funds from schools that hide their curriculum from parents across the states.
Thank you. So as we are fast approaching a summer Supreme Court ruling which has the potential to overturn Roe v. Wade, how would you address the issue of women's reproductive rights and healthcare as a member of Congress? Mr. Killmeyer?
The federal government needs to take a hard look at a 20-week life protection law. Since Roe v. Wade was incorrectly decided and 9 robed judges decided abortion policy for the country, we've been out in the wilderness. About 800,000 dead babies a year. And I use that phrasing, and people ask me, why am I being so needlessly provocative? I'm not. That's the reality of what we've done. So the federal legislature in January 2023, 8.5 months from now, needs to take a very serious look at a 20-week life protection ban, as the states at the same time are coming up with their own life protection measures.
Thank you. Ms. Coder?
Well, being the only woman in the race, it is a little different, I think, looking at this from a woman's perspective. I do believe life begins at conception, and I think that's the fundamental challenge with this topic is where people think life begins. So I do believe it begins at conception. However, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, I think the states are going to have to be making legislation on this. And I do think, obviously we wouldn't be involved in that, but I do think that there needs to be some protection, like Jason said, at the 20-week mark, where that when you can see what's going on, and that it needs to be protected. All life is precious and should be protected. So I want to advocate for women, though, and how we can, if we say that and protect it, how do we come alongside of them in the process?
Thank you. Ms. Coder, we'll start with you for this next one. Misinformation and disinformation are poisoning our democracy by stoking fear and division. What are your suggestions on how to counter this trend?
Well, as I look at this race and I look at what's going on in our country, and I just wrote something on LinkedIn about this, I have always been someone throughout my business life and political local government that I believe we have more things in common than we do apart. There may be some issues we're never going to agree on, but I think people are looking for hope. And there's too much division. And I think, I can't make other people do anything, but I can be a role model for how we can have a vision and hope and bring people together for the common good of America that we all know and love, and where we grew up, right? I'm a little bit older than the other two candidates, but I want that America that I grew up in, that I had hope, and I think everybody's looking for hope.
Thank you. Mr. Killmeyer?
Kristen, I actually disagree with the proposition in the question. I believe that the terms misinformation and disinformation are used by mainstream media and left-wing outlets to try to discredit points of view. And let me be very specific why I say that. Only in a truly open and free marketplace of ideas does the truth have any chance of surviving. If we as a country can't handle that, if we can't handle the First Amendment in its totality, then what are we doing here anyways? We do live in an era of division, civil unrest, even political violence. But the answer to that is not the inevitable censorship that will always accompany attempts to limit quote unquote misinformation or disinformation.
Thank you. Our next question was submitted by a member of the public. What is your position on requiring the disclosure of the source of campaign donations? Mr. Killmeyer, we'll start with you.
I think we should do that. And I am very aware, by the way, how left-wing activists will target political donors. I've seen that happen. Barack Obama actually did this by publicly calling out donors to Mitt Romney in 2012, which I thought was a dangerous precedent for a sitting president to set. That said, what we need right now is civic trust, and that requires sunlight, real sunlight. So I am not a fan of limiting what can be spent on political campaigns. I believe that Americans should be free to contribute as they see fit, but I also believe that as Americans, we can rightfully decide to require disclosure.
Thank you. Ms. Coder?
I also agree that it should be unlimited. If someone, it's like when you believe in something, you want to invest in it. And that's what I said to someone the other day. I said, this isn't a donation, it's an investment. So I do believe people should be able to do that at their free will. And I also believe in transparency. I think it's great if people can see where the money is coming from, but I also think that people should not be targeted for who they invest in. So I am a fan of transparency in this, as well as unlimited donations if someone wants to make them.
Thank you. So Ms. Coder, we'll start with you for this next question. How would you balance support for industrial policies that favor extractive oil and gas industries and those that favor renewable sources of energy?
What was the first part of the question? I didn't get that. I'm sorry. I know the end of it there.
How would you balance support for industrial policies that favor extractive oil and gas industries and those that favor renewable sources of energy?
Well, this is a question I think so many times, and we were talking about division, that people on both sides want you to be either or. And I really believe this question is one of those. I don't think it's an either or. We all know we need to be looking and being innovative for renewable sources of energy. However, to say that the rest of it is going to go away is really not even realistic, and it'll take a very long time to get to renewable energy. However, I do believe the natural gas industry is very clean, and it can be a bridge to get us to the renewable energy. And we are, in this district, we are sitting on a gold mine when it comes to natural gas and all the benefits of that. So I really do think we can balance both of those, and I don't think it's an either or question.
Thank you. Mr. Killmeyer?
I think any attempt to balance those two rests upon a supposition that is inaccurate. And what I mean by that is renewable energies aren't ready for the show. They're not there yet. Everything that the federal government needs to do to relieve the pain that Americans are feeling at the pump and to improve our national security requires of us to develop the resources that we have here. Kathy rightly mentioned natural gas, the natural hydrocarbon gases that the earth has provided for us. Why should we not move forward with that type of technology? Again, it is the right business case, and it is the right case from a national security perspective. The environmental movement, the modern environmental movement, is essentially a religious movement at this point. And the number one emission in this country is transportation. So when the left says they want to limit emissions, what they're really saying is they want to make it harder for you to get to work tomorrow.
Thank you. So Mr. Killmeyer, we'll start with you for this next question. What do you think Congress should do, or what actions can and should Congress take in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Good question. So Joe Biden failed to deter Vladimir Putin up front. And so we are now stuck with limited options, none of them good. And the reality is this: sanctions don't stop tanks. So what do we do now that we failed to deter that invasion? And for the first time in generations, there is a ground war in Europe. We can do two things in addition to funding the Ukrainian resistance. We can protect NATO's eastern flank and draw big, bright red lines so that everybody around the world understands where our boundaries are. The second thing that we can do is this: we can go after Vladimir Putin. Here's what he understands: threats to his prestige and threats to his pocketbook. There's a lot more we could be doing. Not sanctioning a random Russian oligarch who's afraid of Putin, but going after him personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coder?
I believe that, no one can look at the news and not have a broken heart at what's going on over there and the people that are being hurt. I do think America needs to step up. Obviously, we're doing some funding, but I do think we need to come to not with troops, but with better weapons and tools for them to fight this war. And I also believe that China is watching what's going on in our response to this. And I do think that we need to, as Jason said, we need to hit the pocketbook of Putin because he's all about his power and his pocketbook. So those are a couple things we can be doing, but I do think we need to step up our funding and our resources that we're giving the Ukraine people.
Thank you. So Kathy, we'll start with you for this one. What is one area where you think you can find common ground with the opposition party in order to solve some of the challenges that lie ahead?
Well, I think one of the things, I've been in leadership development for a long time, and I used to work for Stephen Covey. And I think one of the things that's happening right now is we're not listening to one another. And he says to seek first to understand, then to be understood. So there are some things. I actually was at the Pyoga. We were talking about oil and gas, and I was listening to someone that was very much about renewable energy. And I learned so much. And one of the things I think in that industry, it is about natural gas and the jobs and different things that can happen in this district. But I also think there's a way to move towards more renewable energy. So in that area, I would love to listen and learn and work together on bringing jobs back here and how we can see both of those things happen in the future of this district.
Thank you. Mr. Killmeyer?
The American people have seen how far the left is going, and they are about to sweep them out of office. And at that point, with a hopefully humble Joe Biden, we can pass specific jobs legislation to bring back semiconductor manufacturing, to reestablish our shipbuilding capacity, and to reestablish, very importantly, the sensitive medical supply chains where we have been dependent on China. That can never be allowed to happen again. So we talk about bringing jobs back to the United States. These are three specific areas. Each of those, there are either pieces of pending legislation or legislation that needs added to, as well as a number of other areas. Rare earth materials is an example. Tom Cotton just introduced a law to establish a foundry there. We can bring jobs back: ships, semiconductors, sensitive medical supplies.
Thank you. So right now we are all faced with increasing food and gas prices, along with increasing inflation. What would you propose to do in order to reduce inflation without causing a recession? Mr. Killmeyer?
Yeah, the number one thing that we can do is stop government spending, right? So when people think about the recession causing, that's them trusting the expertise of a Federal Reserve that has proven itself inadequate to the moment and has been behind, reminding us and trying to reassure people that this inflation is transitory. It sure doesn't feel that way. But the federal government is now an economic wild card. Businesses can't plan. Restaurants can't set their menus. I talked to the owner of an antique shop who said, I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to be open next week, let alone if I'm going to have people in the shop, or if I'm going to be able to even interact with customers. We can prevent the federal government from becoming a wild card. And the number one way to do that is to shut off the spigot of unlimited spending. Businesses can plan again. Workers will get back to work. And we can restore a degree of normalcy and predictability that businesses require and Americans deserve.
Thank you. Ms. Coder?
Well, I agree with Jason. We have to look at our spending. We have $30 trillion in debt. And I would like to see what we can do to trim that. And I know there's many, many areas. I look around and see them all the time. And it goes from local all the way up to federal. There's too much spending. So that's one way to do it. But I also think we need to give people some type of incentive, and I don't mean government incentive, but we need to look at small businesses, as Jason was saying. I was talking to someone the other day, and she said she thinks she's a small business owner. There's going to be more businesses close in Q4 than in COVID. So I think we really need to look at that, because if we lose our small businesses, we're going to be in big trouble. So we need to look at that and how we can get them going again, and also people working, because we can't find workers.
Thank you. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation has recently proposed adding toll roads to several areas in Pennsylvania, including parts of Interstate 79. What are your thoughts on this policy and plans for stopping or moving forward with these toll roads? Ms. Coder, we'll start with you.
Well, that would be a Pennsylvania thing. And I am just astounded, even the turnpike, how much it has gone up. And then we have a turnpike commission, which I have never really been in favor of that. So I am not opposed to a toll road. I mean, I am opposed to a toll road or any more tolls that are put on us. But one thing I will say, I used to live in Atlanta, and there's 400, if anybody's ever been there. And they said, we're going to toll 400 until it's paid for. And you know what? Doggone it. They kept their promise. So if we can do something like that, if it's for paying for that road initially, I'm okay with that. But I am not for more tolls and more burden on the taxpayers.
Thank you. Mr. Killmeyer?
Yeah, these tolls are the wrong move at the wrong time. People are hurting out there. And I understand we have to pay for upgrades, but quite frankly, the people of Pennsylvania are tired of paying for a never-ending construction site. And I believe that if you look at, and I don't want to misstate this, but I believe that if you look at the contracts that are underway for some of these tolls, that these are run by private companies, some who may be from out of state or even out of country.
Thank you. So Mr. Killmeyer, we'll start with you for this next question. Inequality of opportunity, access, and wages are problems for many people in this country, including women, people of color, and members of the LGBTQ+ community. With that, many states are currently passing anti-gay, anti-transgender legislation. What specific steps, if any, would you take to address these issues on the federal level?
Yeah, I'll just say up front, I'm not aware of any anti-gay legislation. I have seen the mainstream media mischaracterize legislation passed in Florida and another of other states, and I think they are maliciously mischaracterizing it. And I think that overreach that we're seeing is going to be part of why there's a Republican wave in November. And when I think about opportunity, I don't divide people into categories. When I appeal to voters in every part of this district, they have the same concerns as anybody else. Why is gas so expensive? Why did it just cost me this much to fill up my tank? Why can't I plan, for example, again, to set my menu if I'm a restaurant owner? I think that these concerns are universal, and I think they will be front of mind of voters, white voters, Black voters, Latino voters, LGBTQ voters. Everybody has the same concerns when inflation is this bad and gas is $4.50 a gallon.
Thank you, Ms. Coder.
I think we need to quit demonizing each other, and I think that's part of the division. And I really believe everybody is cut out of the same human cloth. And at a federal level, I don't think we can really do much about any of these things you're talking about. I don't think, I'm not for putting in more legislation. I think we have plenty of laws, and especially something like this, I don't think that's a federal, something that the federal government should be doing. But I believe all people are created equal, and they should be treated fairly. And I have been the recipient of some of those things happening to women where I'm not getting the same wage as a man. But I do believe with HR laws, and I work with a lot of HR department, that has been remedied in many or most organizations. But I do think that awareness is good, but I don't think we need more legislation.
Thank you. So Kathy, we'll start with you for this next question. Some scientists believe that climate change must be addressed swiftly to stop or roll back its negative effects. What actions, if any, would you support to address the effects of climate change?
Well, I like to look at science, and I think that there's been alarmists about climate change, but at the same time, I think we need to look and say, there has been climate change. So I do think that part of that is that we need to address what is going on. And there are things, obviously, that human beings are contributing to that. And I do think by looking at some of the natural gas, it's known that it can reduce 30% emissions, and it can really help with some of the things that are going on. So I think natural gas is part of this, and like I said, and moving towards some of the renewable sources. So a combination of those things could definitely help with the climate. But I think it's over emphasized.
Thank you. Mr. Killmeyer?
Climate change, the way the left wing defines it nowadays, right? We have 78 years to avert an exactly 1.5 degrees Celsius change in conditions is essentially a religious doctrine. There's no way to predict that, and no way to predict that number of variables with any real accuracy. What we're seeing is an anti-carbon, anti-pipeline movement that is in many ways anti-human. We've got to heat our homes. We've got to get around, deliver goods to each other. Now, Elon Musk said something interesting. He said, you pump trillions of tons of anything up into the air, it's probably going to have an impact. And I do think that we need to be stewards of the planet that we've inherited and need to pass along. So let's look at carbon capture. Let's look at mitigation, but let's do so without pushing the people who are already on the cracks through. Let's protect people's economic health first.
Thank you. This next question was submitted by a member of the public. President Biden has once again extended the student loan repayment pause until August 31st of this year. Do you support or oppose aiding people with student debt to pay off their loans? Why or why not? And if so, how?
Ladies and gentlemen, of Robert Morris University, students who are watching this here on Saturday. I care about Robert Morris. My parents, in fact, met there. But all of you should pay down all of your student loans. You're adults. You can vote. You can go to war. You put your name on a contract that means something. Do I think that the system we have, exacerbated dramatically when Barack Obama essentially federalized a big chunk of the student loan process, is absurd? Yes. College has in many ways become a victory lap for the upper middle class. But a student loan, quote unquote, forgiveness plan would be one of the biggest wealth transfers in history from the upper middle class to workers, to wage owners, to those who work in the trades. And I cannot abide that.
Thank you. Ms. Coder?
Well, this sounds great. And I have always thought when it was happening about paying off student loans, I mean, who wouldn't want that? But I don't know where the money's going to come from. So I do think, as Jason said, you know, I had student loans. I don't know if Jason did. You know, my family had no money. And I'm still paying back some of the loan from my master's degree. So I do think what this is doing, though, it is making, I think it's going to impact the higher education, and less people are going to go to college. But what it is doing, it's driving people to the trades. And I do think we need to set up some system for the trades like we do college students, that they would have the opportunity to get some loans to help them do their apprenticeships. So I do think they need to pay back their loans, and they need to think twice when they're getting them.
Thank you. Ms. Coder, we'll start with you for this next question. Where do you stand on the issue of voting rights? Do you believe the federal government has a role to play in this?
Well, I do think, well, I think it's more of a state thing, actually. And again, I'm all for pushing things down. And I think we saw what happened in the last election. I think every citizen of America that is not a felon should be able to vote, because that is our right. And I would like to make access for everybody. But I also think we need voter ID. And that is not, to me, disenfranchising. When I go to get an antihistamine, I have to have an ID. So I do think that needs to be looked at, and make sure everybody has access to an ID. But I really believe every citizen should have the right to vote, but not illegal immigrants.
Thank you. Mr. Killmeyer?
Yeah, the assault on our rights is right now coming from Democrats in our federal legislature. The idea that the federal government would take over and usurp state legislative control over the conduct of elections in what Democrats are calling HR 1, their first priority, House Resolution 1 in 3 consecutive Congresses, should tell you about how serious this would be. It would quite literally change the terms of the union and be a death knell for federalism. When Democrats attack state legislative control over elections, when Democrats attack the Electoral College or proportional representation in the Senate, that is them seeking to limit the rights of individuals to decide things for themselves. And a final point I want to make here, we don't have a popular vote for the presidency, and we need to stop making that rhetorical mistake when we say a president won the popular vote. We have never conducted one in the history of this country. We shouldn't start now.
Thank you. This next question will be our last one before closing statements. Mr. Killmeyer, we'll start with, yes, Mr. Killmeyer, we'll start with you. So how will you work to increase job opportunities for your constituents?
Great question. There is so much work to be done. We need to bring back, again, semiconductors, ships, sensitive medical equipment. We can limit the Department of Interior's slowing down and attempt to ban new oil and gas permits. I mean that very specifically. We can write legislation taking that responsibility back away from the executive branch. Major pipeline projects should never again be at the whims of the President of the United States. Western Pennsylvania should be an energy capital of the world. If you put me in Congress, that's what I'm going to do. And in my remaining time on this question, I just want to point out to the audience that Jeremy Schaefer has now skipped his third public event of the week, his second debate in a row. I'm hearing from voters saying, we deserve to know what Jeremy thinks of these issues. I agree.
Thank you. Ms. Coder?
Well, this is one of my passions in my work life and my business. I teach leadership and business development. And in the towns that I've worked in, I have gone to bat, I've recruited businesses, and I agree with Jason that this is such an opportunity for this region, the energy that we have under our feet. Another thing that I am passionate about is working with the trades. We have some incredible trades that are doing incredible things and bringing enormous amount of jobs and bringing hope to those people that didn't want to go to college. So I would come alongside of them and come alongside of what we have going on right now. I lived in Beaver County when the steel mill shut, and to see the transformation from the cracker plant, I would just be an advocate and really trying to get businesses in around that.
Thank you. So we'll now begin with closing statements. Mr. Killmeyer, you can go first.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you for doing a great job moderating tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I was born and raised right here in Allegheny County. I love Western Pennsylvania. You're going to hear a lot of words tonight from candidates if you stuck through all the way to the end, but both the Democrats and the Republicans. And I want you to do something that you should always do with politicians' words. Take them with a grain of salt. Instead, look at their actions. If a politician tells you they're going to fight for you, ask them what fights they've been in. When they tell you what they're going to do, ask them for the evidence of what they've done. Past performance being the best indicator of future results. I believe I am the best qualified candidate for the position, and as confident as I am in my qualifications, both in national security and fighting for conservative causes, I am as humbly asking you, my friends and neighbors, for this opportunity. I'll do you proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coder?
Well, I never aspired to be a politician. And quite frankly, when people call me one, I say, no, I'm not. My whole reason for getting involved in politics was to make a difference. And I would see a need and I said, somebody's got to do something. And then I thought, I need to do something. So the reason I'm doing this, I feel like we need to rein our country back. We need to bring unity and we need to bring hope. And I am the only candidate that has roots in Beaver County. My whole family's still there. And then I've worked with every single town in the Allegheny part of this district. And I know what their hurts are. I know what their hopes are. And I believe that I can represent this district well and not only go to Washington and stay there, but I want to bring Western Pennsylvania values to Washington. And I want to do something great for this district and be a champion and a cheerleader for District 17. Thank you. And I ask for your vote on May 17th.
Thank you both. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the 17th Congressional District Republican Primary Forum. When citizens play an informed and active role in government, our communities are strengthened. Don't forget that the primary election in Pennsylvania is on Tuesday, May 17th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. A big thank you to both of our candidates for participating tonight. You can look for more information about these candidates on vote411.org, the League of Women Voters online voters guide. You can enter your home address and your entire ballot will appear with candidate information. We wish each candidate the best of luck heading into next month's election. Thank you and have a great rest of your night.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kristen.
Kristen.